There is a force operating beneath the surface of every desire you have ever chased. It does not respond to pressure. It does not reward desperation. It does not bend to your schedules, your strategies, or your relentless determination to make something happen through sheer force of will. And yet, the moment you stop pushing, the moment you genuinely release your grip on the outcome, this same force begins moving mountains on your behalf. Most people will never discover this. They will spend their entire lives grinding harder, planning more obsessively, and fighting with increasing frustration against a current they were never meant to fight. They will achieve some things, lose others, and carry a quiet exhaustion that no amount of success ever seems to cure, because they were never taught the one truth that changes everything. The universe does not respond to your effort. It responds to your state of being. What you are about to hear is not a motivational speech. It is not a collection of pleasant ideas designed to make you feel temporarily inspired. What you are about to encounter is a principle so ancient and so thoroughly misunderstood that its power has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. The masters who understood it built lives of extraordinary ease. The philosophers who wrote about it spoke in riddles because they knew the rational mind would reject it. And the people living it today are the ones who seem to accomplish everything while appearing to try the least. This is the backwards law, and once you truly grasp it, not merely as a concept, but as a lived reality, the way you move through the world will never be the same again. You have been conditioned to believe that wanting something badly enough is a virtue, that straining toward your goals demonstrates character, that the harder you work, the more the universe owes you in return. But consider for a moment what actually happens when you grasp at water. The tighter your fist closes, the faster it escapes. Open your palm, become still, become receptive, and water rests there naturally, effortlessly, as though it had nowhere else it preferred to be. Your desires behave identically. The frantic energy of pursuit creates a field of resistance around everything you want. You broadcast lack, and the universe reflects lack back to you with perfect precision. You broadcast urgency, and the universe treats your desire as something perpetually out of reach. Because that is the energetic message you are sending. The universe is not ignoring you. It is listening more carefully than you realize. The problem is what it is hearing. The backwards law teaches something that will feel counterintuitive at first, and then will feel more obvious than anything you have ever been taught. It reveals that your power is not located in your doing. It lives in your being, not in your seeking, but in your knowing, not in your wanting, but in your already having, internally, energetically, at the level of consciousness that shapes all physical reality before a single external event takes place. The ancient traditions knew this. The sages encoded it in parables. The great spiritual teachers pointed toward it from every angle they could find, hoping that one of the paths would reach you. And now, in this moment, it is reaching you directly, not as a distant philosophical ideal, but as a practical, applicable understanding that you can begin embodying today. In the way you hold your goals, in the way you relate to uncertainty, in the way you move through each day with either the tension of someone chasing or the magnetism of someone who already belongs to what they desire. Part 1 of this audiobook will dismantle the illusions you have been living inside. It will show you, through story and principle and lived example, how the universal law of allowance operates, and why everything you have been taught about achievement has been working against you. The chapters that follow are not steps in a program. They are reflections of a single truth approached from different angles, each one designed to bring you closer to the moment of genuine recognition, the moment when you stop trying to understand the backwards law and simply begin living it. There is nothing you need to force. There is nothing you need to figure out before you can begin. The only requirement is your willingness to release what has not been working and to consider, even provisionally, that ease is not a reward reserved for the lucky few, but a natural state available to anyone who stops making it impossible. Your life is ready to respond differently. It has always been ready. The question has never been whether the universe will deliver. The question has been whether you will allow it to. Begin here. Begin now. Begin by simply listening, without grasping, without analyzing, without trying to extract value by force. Let what is meant for you arrive in its own perfect sequence. This is, after all, exactly how the backwards law works. In the quiet corners of a vibrant, restless city lived Henry, a painter whose brushstrokes carried the full weight of his dreams. For 15 years he had knocked on gallery doors, submitted endless portfolios, and pursued every available opportunity with the kind of frantic determination that leaves a person hollowed out from the inside. Yet, the more intensely he chased recognition, the more stubbornly it receded, like a horizon that retreats at precisely the same pace you advance toward it. Then came one winter morning that would alter the direction of his entire life. Exhausted in a way that sleep could no longer touch, Henry did something he had never permitted himself to do before. He surrendered. Standing alone in his empty studio, he whispered the words quietly, as though speaking them too loudly might break the fragile honesty of the moment. I paint because I must, not because I require anyone's approval. In that single instant of genuine release, something shifted, not in the gallery world, not in the minds of critics, but in the energetic field surrounding Henry's life. Within weeks, a prominent collector happened upon his work displayed in a small neighborhood cafe, where Henry had placed his paintings with no agenda, no pitch, no desperate hope attached. The recognition he had been chasing for a decade and a half now began chasing him. This universal principle operates with a precision that has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with law. When you clutch tightly at what you want, you generate resistance. The very energy of wanting, frantic, contracted, fearful wanting, pushes away the things you are reaching for. It is the equivalent of trying to catch your own shadow. The faster you run toward it, the faster it moves away from you. The ancient masters understood this paradox with extraordinary clarity. They recognized that the universe responds not to force, but to alignment, not to desperation, but to receptivity. The quantum field, the very fabric from which physical reality is continuously woven, reacts directly to your energetic state. When you release the contracted energy of seeking, you open yourself to receive. You become, in a very literal sense, available to what you have been asking for. Margaret's experience illuminates this same truth from a different angle. For 20 years, she had searched for love with an intensity that left no genuine space for it to enter. Every social encounter became a quiet interview. Every connection carried the invisible weight of her expectation. It was only when she discovered a real sense of peace in her own company, when she genuinely released her grip on the need to find a partner, that love located her rather than the other way around. 3 men began expressing sincere interest within months of her letting go. The universe had not changed. Her energy had. What you pursue tends to retreat. What you allow tends to arrive. This is not poetic sentiment. It is a fundamental law of energy and consciousness, one that operates whether or not you believe in it, just as gravity operates regardless of whether you understand its mechanics. When you stop trying to redirect the river of life toward yourself, you discover something astonishing. You have been standing in your own stream all along. To begin practicing this law today, find a quiet space and close your eyes. Bring to mind something you have been relentlessly pursuing: success, love, abundance, recognition. Feel the tension your pursuit has created in your energy field. Sense how contracted, how effortful, how exhausting it has been. Now, slowly and deliberately, open your hands and release this pursuit into the larger intelligence of the universe. Breathe deeply as these words settle into your being. I release my desperate need for this specific outcome. I trust in divine timing. What is genuinely meant for me has no way of missing me. Practice this daily. Watch how the universe responds to your surrender in ways your strategy never could. In the heart of a relentless metropolis, James rose before dawn every single morning, his mind already racing with schemes and calculations. Before he had fully opened his eyes, he attended every business seminar he could locate, consumed every success manual in print, and regularly pushed himself through 16-hour workdays until exhaustion rendered his thinking unreliable. And yet, despite all of this extraordinary effort, financial freedom remained perpetually just beyond his grasp, dissolving like morning mist each time he believed he was finally close. James embodied a truth that sits at the absolute core of manifestation. The more desperately you pursue something, the more rapidly it moves away from you. His struggle was not a personal failing. It was a precise reflection of a cosmic law he had never been taught, a law that says the universe moves not through force, but through ease. Nature makes this obvious when we slow down enough to observe it. Flowers do not strain their way into bloom. Rivers do not force themselves to the ocean. They find the path of least resistance and follow it with a grace that accomplishes more than any exertion could. This same principle reverberates through quantum physics, where the act of observation alone alters the behavior of matter, and through ancient Eastern philosophy, which teaches that Wu Wei, the principle of effortless, non-forcing action, represents the highest and most powerful form of engagement with life. When James finally collapsed from exhaustion one evening, unable to push any further, something remarkable revealed itself in his surrender. His striving, he understood with sudden and complete clarity, had been generating resistance to the very abundance he was working so hard to attract. The moment he released his death grip on the outcome, the universe began moving on his behalf. A chance encounter led organically to an effortless partnership, and within months, wealth flowed into his life with a grace that all his previous effort had never produced. Eleanor's story reflects this same pattern from the realm of creative work. As a writer, she had battled creative paralysis for years, forcing words onto blank pages, willing sentences into existence through pure determination, watching her creative vitality wither beneath the pressure of her own expectations. Then, one day, she simply stopped trying to write. She began taking long, directionless walks. She let her mind wander without agenda, and to her deep amazement, stories began arriving naturally, as though they had been patiently waiting for her to step out of their way. Struggle is not the prerequisite for achievement that our culture insists it is. In most cases, struggle is the very mechanism that prevents achievement. When you release the compulsion to control every outcome, you move into alignment with the natural abundance that the universe has always been prepared to deliver. The ocean does not grant water to a clenched fist. Open your palm, hold it still, and water gathers there as if drawn by a quiet invitation. This is the way of manifesting every genuine desire. The universe responds not to your effort, but to your state of being. To practice this understanding, find a quiet, undisturbed space and bring your awareness to any area of your life where you have been pushing hard. Feel the tension of that effort in your physical body. Now, with each slow exhale, consciously release that tension. Imagine your desires as leaves resting on the surface of a gently moving stream. You do not need to chase them. You do not need to manage their journey. The current knows exactly where it is going, and it is going precisely where you need to be. In the center of a thriving city lived David, a merchant whose hands gripped every aspect of his life so tightly that joy found no room to remain. Each morning he crafted meticulous plans for every minute of the day ahead, mapping each interaction, anticipating each outcome, attempting to manage each moment with precise, exhausting control. And yet, the tighter his grip became, the more his world seemed to dissolve into chaos around him. You have inhabited this feeling, the constriction in your chest when life refuses to follow the script you have written for it, the mounting frustration when the river of your existence refuses to flow in the direction you have designated. What David discovered, and what most people discover only after considerable suffering, is that the things you attempt most forcefully to control are the very things that slip away most completely. Martha's experience mirrors this truth with particular clarity. For decades, she constructed elaborate walls of protection around her heart, evaluating potential partners through exhaustive criteria lists, monitoring every relationship with vigilant attention, always scanning for the first indication of threat. Yet, genuine love remained as distant as ever, until the morning she recognized with quiet devastation that her protection had become her prison. The very walls she had built to keep pain out were keeping love out with equal efficiency. In releasing her grip, in choosing to trust the natural intelligence of life rather than her own fearful management of it, Martha discovered something she had been searching for all along. Security was never located in control. It lived in trust. Trust in the wisdom of the universe. Trust in her own inner guidance. Trust in the simple revolutionary idea that life, when allowed to unfold in its own timing, tends to unfold more beautifully than anything she could have engineered. All that you are searching for is simultaneously searching for you, but it cannot enter through a door you have locked from the inside out of fear. Begin a daily practice of releasing control in small, manageable increments. Each morning, identify one aspect of your day that you typically attempt to manage: your commute, a conversation, an outcome you have been fixated on. Make a deliberate choice to release your grip on this one thing. Allow it to unfold without your intervention. Watch how life moves more gracefully when you step aside and permit its natural intelligence to operate. In the commercial heart of a busy city, Frederick paced his office deep into each night, surrounded by mounting paperwork and lists of tasks that never seemed to diminish. His mind generated solutions in an endless cascade, each one more elaborate than the last, while success remained stubbornly just beyond the threshold of his effort. The harder he pushed, the more his business seemed to resist him. The ancient masters understood something that modern culture has almost entirely forgotten. Power does not live in relentless action. It lives in sacred stillness. When you cease the perpetual motion of doing and enter the realm of pure being, you gain access to an intelligence far exceeding anything your strategizing mind can produce. This is not idleness. It is heightened receptivity, the state in which genuine solutions emerge naturally, the way flowers emerge in their own perfect timing, without any external force demanding their appearance. Quantum physics offers a remarkable parallel here. Particles exist in multiple simultaneous states until the moment of observation, a phenomenon that mirrors the spiritual understanding that possibilities remain fluid until consciousness engages them with focused, receptive awareness. Your constant movement, your relentless seeking, actually collapses infinite possibilities into limited outcomes. Stillness expands them. Clara discovered this truth through her own journey as a celebrated musician. She had long believed that mastery was the product of endless practice and forceful repetition. Her breakthrough arrived only when she learned to listen to the silence between the notes, the space that gives music its meaning and its power. In stillness, she found the music that had been residing within her all along, waiting for the noise of her effort to quiet long enough to be heard. To access this power in your own life, create a daily practice of intentional stillness. Find a quiet place where interruption is unlikely. Sit comfortably. Let your breath find its own natural rhythm without your management. Observe your thoughts without becoming entangled in them, the way you might watch clouds moving across an open sky, without trying to alter their course. Begin with 5 minutes and gradually extend this time. In these moments of quiet, hold your desires lightly in your awareness, not as desperate wishes you are gripping, but as seeds already planted in fertile, intelligent soil. Trust that in stillness you become a natural magnet for the inspiration and the manifestations that have been trying to reach you. The universe's most fundamental forces, gravity, magnetism, electricity, operate in complete silence. Your own power emerges not from what you relentlessly do, but from who you become in the sacred space of stillness. Robert stood before his bathroom mirror each morning, surrounded by stacked self-help books and affirmations taped to every available surface, working through an ever-expanding list of personal qualities to develop and deficiencies to eliminate. Yet, with each new habit mastered and each new technique adopted, he felt increasingly hollow, as though the more he added to himself, the less of himself actually remained. This path is familiar to many, the endless journey of self-improvement that, paradoxically, carries you further from your authentic nature with every step. The ancient wisdom traditions identified this paradox clearly. Your relentless effort to become better is the very veil obscuring the wholeness that was already present beneath all your seeking. Real transformation does not happen through addition. It happens through subtraction, through the removal of the accumulated layers of false identity that have been covering your authentic nature like sediment over a clear spring. Like a sculptor who reveals the masterpiece not by adding material, but by removing everything that is not the statue. Your path to genuine power runs directly through releasing what is not truly you. Edna, a gifted musician, spent years trying to reshape herself into what she imagined a great artist should look like. She studied dozens of techniques, mimicked celebrated performers, and forced herself into molds of perfection that never quite fit. Her genuine breakthrough arrived only when she stopped trying to become anything at all. In releasing the carefully constructed identity she had been maintaining, she discovered a voice that had always been there, pure, authentic, and completely her own. This extends beyond artistry into every dimension of existence. The more you work to fix yourself, the more you reinforce the unconscious belief that you are broken. The more you strive to become something other than what you are, the further you drift from the authentic power that has always been your natural state. To practice this, find a quiet space and bring to mind all the labels you have attached to yourself, all the things you believe you should be or become. One by one, allow them to dissolve like morning mist in warm sunlight. Achiever, striver, seeker, incomplete, not enough. Let each identity release its hold on you. Do not rush to fill the space that remains. Simply rest in the open awareness that is present when all labels have been set aside. In this spaciousness, you will find what you have been searching for everywhere else, the wholeness that was never actually missing, only obscured. Your true power lies not in becoming, but in being, not in accumulating, but in releasing, not in fixing what you incorrectly perceived as broken, but in recognizing the completeness that has always been your fundamental nature. In the research halls of a prestigious institution, Charles observed quantum particles through his microscope day after day, documenting something that gradually shook the foundation of everything he thought he understood about reality. The mere act of watching these particles altered their behavior. Observation itself, pure, non-interfering awareness, changed what was being observed at the most fundamental level of physical existence. You stand at the threshold of this same discovery. Just as Charles found that observation transforms reality at the quantum level, you too carry this power of awareness, the ability to shift what you witness simply by the quality of your attention. When you become entangled in a negative thought pattern, when you merge completely with anxiety, doubt, or fear, you become that pattern. Your identity fuses with it, and it shapes your reality from the inside out. But when you create space between your awareness and your thoughts, everything changes. You activate your position as the observer, the consciousness that exists behind all experience and is never defined by any of it. Beatrice discovered this during a period of profound personal darkness, consumed by anxiety that had controlled her for years. She learned a practice so simple it initially seemed insufficient for the scale of her suffering. Instead of declaring, "I am anxious," she learned to notice there is anxiety present. This subtle shift, this tiny act of creating distance between her identity and her emotional weather, produced a space that grew steadily larger with practice. In that space, she found a freedom she had not known was available. As she developed this capacity for detached observation, the emotions that had once overwhelmed her transformed into passing conditions in the vast, unchanging sky of her awareness. She was not her thoughts. She was not her emotions. She was the eternal witness, present, stable, unaffected by the temporary phenomena moving through her experience. When a difficult thought or emotion surfaces, do not fight it or try to eliminate it. Instead, step into the position of the witness. Notice the thought or feeling as though observing it from a slight distance. Say internally, "I am observing this thought," rather than, "This is my thought." Feel the space that opens between your awareness and the thought itself. Rest in that space. Watch how the thought gradually loses its intensity when you are no longer entirely identified with it. This is the transformative power of detached observation. The same intelligence that alters reality at the quantum level, now working through your own consciousness to reshape your lived experience. In the quiet corridors of a distinguished university, Herbert clutched his research papers with trembling hands each morning, reviewing citation indexes with an urgency that had long since crossed the threshold from ambition into something closer to compulsion. For 15 years, he had published paper after paper, attended every available conference, and positioned himself at every professional gathering where recognition might be distributed. Each morning began with the same gnawing hollowness, the checking, the refreshing, the waiting for an invitation that never seemed to arrive on his terms. You have inhabited this particular hunger, the kind that does not diminish when you feed it, but grows larger and more insistent with every attempt at satisfaction. Like Herbert, you may have discovered that desire itself, when held with a white-knuckled grip, becomes its own form of confinement, its walls constructed entirely from endless wanting. The ancient teachers were precise about this. Attachment is the root of suffering, but they were equally precise about what this did not mean. It did not mean abandoning your aspirations or pretending you have no preferences. It meant something far more nuanced and far more powerful. True manifestation occurs in the delicate, fertile space between wanting and releasing, in the moment after you have felt your desire fully and before you have allowed it to calcify into desperate need. When Herbert finally absorbed this understanding, everything reorganized itself around his new relationship with his work. One evening, after receiving another rejection, he placed all his research in a drawer and walked away from it, not in defeat, but in genuine release. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to simply exist, without the continuous burden of proving his value to an audience that had not yet recognized it. He returned to teaching not for the recognition it might eventually produce, but for the pure, uncomplicated satisfaction of sharing knowledge he genuinely loved. Within months, something extraordinary unfolded without his pursuing it. His earlier work began attracting attention from colleagues who had previously overlooked it. Speaking invitations arrived without solicitation. The recognition he had been chasing for a decade and a half began moving toward him, not because his actions had changed, but because his energy had transformed completely. He had stopped broadcasting lack. He had stopped transmitting the frequency of someone who does not yet have what they need. And the universe, which had been listening with absolute fidelity all along, simply adjusted its response to match his new signal. This operates through a mechanism of consciousness that is both simple and profound. When you crave something with intensity, you transmit, at a level beneath conscious thought, the energetic message that you do not have it. This frequency of absence repels the very things you are reaching for. But when you release the craving while maintaining clear intention, you enter a state of magnetic allowance. You hold the desire without the desperation. You know what you want without needing it in order to feel whole. And in this state, the universe can finally deliver what it has been attempting to give you all along. To shift from craving to receiving, practice this each evening. Sit in stillness and bring your deepest desires fully into your awareness. Feel them completely. Allow yourself to experience the wanting without judgment. Then gather all of these desires into a single sphere of radiant light in the center of your chest. Watch this sphere grow brighter with each breath. Now open your heart and release it into the larger intelligence of the universe, trusting completely that what is genuinely meant for you will return in its own perfect timing. As you practice this nightly release, notice how your relationship with desire begins to evolve. Like Herbert, you may find that the very things you are exhausting yourself chasing begin moving in your direction. Not as coincidence, but as the natural operation of a law that has been governing your reality all along. On the field, before a championship match, Joseph stood rigid with anxiety. His muscles locked with the accumulated tension of years of relentless training and self-imposed pressure. He had studied every competitor, analyzed every movement, and pushed his body past reasonable limits on countless occasions. Yet, despite all of this extraordinary preparation, genuine mastery remained elusive. His muscles held the tightness of someone trying too hard. His mind carried the weight of someone who could not afford to fail. The ancient scrolls hold a different teaching about achievement than the one most people inherit. Mastery does not emerge from force. It flows from surrender to the natural intelligence that years of dedicated practice have deposited within the body and mind. When Joseph finally absorbed this understanding, when he stopped trying to manage every movement and allowed his accumulated training to express itself naturally, his performance transformed in ways that deliberate effort had never produced. His movements became fluid. His responses became instinctive. His body operated from a deeper wisdom than his conscious mind had ever been able to access through sheer determination. The universe moves through this paradox consistently. The more completely you surrender to its flow, the more powerfully it moves through you. Like water finding its natural course down a mountainside, success flows most freely when you cease obstructing it with resistance. This understanding echoes through every major wisdom tradition. The Tao Te Ching speaks of Wu Wei, accomplishing through non-forcing. The Bhagavad Gita teaches karma yoga, acting fully without attachment to outcomes. Even contemporary sports science confirms what these ancient frameworks have always understood. Peak performance consistently emerges from states of relaxed, alert awareness rather than from forced, anxious exertion. Joseph discovered that victory arrived not through trying harder, but through a specific quality of trying less, through releasing the need to control every variable and accessing the deeper intelligence that knew, without conscious direction, exactly when to move, where to position himself, and how to respond to each unfolding moment. To access this state in your own life, practice this daily. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Breathe naturally, allowing each breath to flow without your management or direction. Notice how your body breathes itself without effort, without conscious instruction, with a precision no amount of deliberate control could improve upon. Extend this awareness of effortlessness throughout your entire being. Feel the subtle, continuous energy moving through you without requiring anything from you. Simply observe this flow for several minutes, releasing any impulse to control or redirect it. When you open your eyes, carry this quality of effortless awareness into your activities. You are not the one doing the doing. You are the channel through which universal intelligence expresses itself. When you align with this flow, everything becomes graceful. Not because you have stopped acting, but because you have stopped interfering with the deeper intelligence that knows exactly how to act. On a narrow, creaking bridge, high above a roaring canyon, a merchant named Liang moved with excruciating caution, his hands locked around everything he had accumulated: gold, jewels, precious silks, representing the labor of a lifetime. With each step forward, the wind intensified. His possessions, which he had always regarded as his security, now made each step more treacherous than the last. The very things he was trying to protect were becoming the source of his danger. You may recognize the shape of this situation in your own life. The way the things you hold most tightly, certainty, outcomes, specific versions of success, can become the weight that prevents you from crossing safely to where you need to be. A wise woman appeared at the far end of the bridge and offered him 6 words that would permanently alter his understanding of power. Only by opening your hands can you save yourself. Liang faced the essential human choice in its most concentrated form: cling to what he had accumulated and risk everything, or release and discover what lay on the other side of surrender. When he finally opened his hands and let his treasures scatter into the wind, something occurred that his controlling mind could not have anticipated. His body lightened immediately. His steps became sure and steady. He crossed to the other side with an ease that had been completely unavailable to him while he was gripping. And there, arranged with impossible precision, on the far shore, he found all his possessions carried by the very wind he had been fighting, delivered more safely than his own grip had ever managed. This is the paradox of true power. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is the gateway to a force far larger than individual will, one that can orchestrate possibilities your limited perspective could never have imagined or engineered. A wandering monk named Kai found himself lost in a vast desert, fighting the environment with everything he had, rationing desperately, pushing against heat, scanning the horizon with the vigilance of someone who believes salvation can be forced. Only when complete exhaustion removed the option of continued fighting did he notice what had been available all along: the direction of the wind, the patterns written in the stars, the subtle movement of small desert creatures navigating instinctively toward water. In surrendering to the desert's guidance, rather than imposing his own, he found the oasis. Stand in an open space. Raise your arms with your palms facing the sky. Close your eyes. Bring into your awareness everything you have been struggling to control or force. Every outcome you have been managing. Every fear you have been defending against. Every desire you have been gripping. Feel the accumulated weight of all of it. Then, slowly and deliberately, begin releasing these things one by one into the infinite space above you. Let your hands open gradually, allowing each concern to lift away like leaves carried upward on a warm current. Stay in this posture of complete surrender until you feel a genuine shift from grasping to receiving, from forcing to allowing. Your ego will resist this. It interprets surrender as loss. But on the other side of that resistance lies the discovery that has been waiting for you all along. What you seek has been seeking you with equal persistence, and it can only reach you when your hands are finally open. In the quiet pre-dawn hours at his writing desk, Walter sat surrounded by the physical evidence of 15 years of rejection. Each refusal letter carried its own particular weight, and together they formed a burden that had gradually transformed his original vision into something almost unrecognizable. Rewritten so many times to satisfy imagined critics that its authentic voice had been edited completely away. Then came the morning of genuine surrender. Walter set aside the manuscript that had consumed him and began writing with a single, simple criterion: his own joy. No imagined publishers, no anticipated criticism, no calculated targeting of market preferences, just the pure, uncomplicated pleasure of stories that made something in him come alive. In this state of creation, uncontaminated by desperate need, his words recovered a quality they had lost somewhere in the long years of effortful pursuit. Within months, these writings, born from freedom rather than force, attracted the attention of a publisher who recognized immediately the authentic power that strategic rewriting had been systematically erasing. Walter had not improved his craft by trying harder. He had recovered it by releasing the need to make it acceptable. The ancient mystics understood that all genuine manifestation originates in the invisible realm of energy before it takes form in physical reality. Modern quantum understanding now confirms what these wisdom keepers always knew. Your state of being during the creative process shapes the reality that emerges from it, with far more precision than any technique or strategy you might overlay on top of it. Lillian's experience demonstrates this from a professional angle. For years, she had crafted impeccable resumes, built her network with methodical intention, and pursued her ideal position through every conventional channel available. Success continued to evade her until she made a shift so fundamental that it initially felt almost irrational. Instead of hunting for the opportunity she wanted, she began living as though it already existed. She arranged her home workspace to reflect the professional environment she envisioned. She organized her days according to the schedule she desired. She moved through the world with the natural confidence of someone already inhabiting their dream. Within weeks, a connection arrived organically that led directly to the exact position she had been unable to force into existence through years of deliberate pursuit. To enter this state of aligned creation, find a quiet space and close your eyes. Allow your desired reality to arise naturally in your imagination, not as something you are straining toward, but as something you are simply observing, the way you might watch a film you are completely at ease with. Notice how your body relaxes when you release the need to make anything happen. If thoughts about timelines or methods arise, simply watch them pass without engaging them. Your role is not to direct the universe. It is to align with the creative intelligence that already knows exactly how to bring into form what you have been asking for. In the city's commercial district, Alfred prepared for every client meeting like a soldier preparing for combat. Scripts memorized, statistics committed to memory, objections pre-answered, and energy tightly wound with determination. Deals, he was certain, were won through superior preparation and relentless follow-through. Yet, despite this formidable machinery of effort, genuine success continued to feel like it was always just slightly out of reach. One afternoon, Alfred observed his colleague Thomas in a client meeting and found himself watching something he had no framework to explain. Where Alfred would have launched into his carefully rehearsed presentation, Thomas simply listened. He smiled with genuine warmth. He spoke with a quiet certainty that seemed to emerge from somewhere deeper than preparation, and deals appeared to form around him with a natural ease that Alfred's most determined efforts had never produced. Thomas operated from belief rather than strategy, not hope, belief, not wish, knowing. And this distinction, Alfred would eventually understand, made all the difference that mattered. Ancient teachings across every tradition speak of faith moving mountains. Contemporary neuroscience confirms the mechanism. Your beliefs literally reshape the neural architecture of your brain, which in turn reshapes the energetic field you project into every interaction, every room, every relationship. When you genuinely believe in an outcome, not as an intellectual position, but as a bodily knowing, your energy shifts from the contracted frequency of forcing to the expanded frequency of allowing. Channels that were previously blocked by the tension of effort open naturally. Abundance flows into the space created by genuine trust. Florence's healing demonstrates this principle from within the body itself. After years of fighting her illness through increasingly desperate medical protocols, she discovered an entirely different relationship with her own physical intelligence. Instead of treating her body as an adversary to be overcome, she began trusting it as an infinitely wise system designed for self-restoration. Each morning, she placed her hands over her heart and felt the quiet, continuous intelligence animating every cell. She stopped searching for external cures and started genuinely believing in her body's natural capacity to restore equilibrium. Her medical team observed changes that their frameworks struggled to account for, not because something miraculous had intervened from outside, but because Florence had finally stopped obstructing her own healing with the energy of desperate fighting. To activate the power of genuine faith in your own life, find a quiet space and bring to mind something you have been trying to force into existence. Feel the tension this struggle has created, how it lives in your shoulders, your jaw, your chest. Now imagine setting this struggle down completely, the way you would set down a physical weight you have been carrying for so long you forgot it was optional. Let your breath deepen as you shift into a state of genuine trust. Feel the relief of knowing that what you are seeking is already making its way toward you. There is nothing to prove, nothing to manage, nothing to force into being. The intelligence of the universe exceeds your most sophisticated planning by an immeasurable degree. Rest in this knowing. Return to it daily. Watch how life begins responding not to your effort, but to your trust, which is the only currency the universe has ever actually accepted. In his meticulously organized study, Thomas moved through his days surrounded by backup plans for his backup plans, each contingency mapped with exhaustive precision. His desk drawers held scenarios for every possible way the future might unfold. And still life seemed to take particular pleasure in arriving through the one door he had not thought to account for. The greatest minds in human history have understood something about certainty that runs directly counter to what most people spend their lives pursuing. Einstein spoke of the sacred mystery at the foundation of genuine scientific inquiry. The Buddha taught that peace emerges not from securing the future against all possibility of change, but from releasing the grip on what we have decided must happen. These were not comforting philosophical positions. They were precise insights into the nature of reality itself. Insights that, when genuinely absorbed, produce a radical reorientation in how a person moves through uncertainty. When Thomas finally exhausted his capacity for planning, he discovered in that surrender a deeper current he had never been able to access while he was busy trying to manage everything. Life began flowing with an ease that his elaborate preparation had consistently prevented. Opportunities arrived that no amount of strategic anticipation could have produced, because they required the space that his planning had been filling. Evelyn's search for partnership illuminates the same principle. She approached love the way Thomas approached his future, with lists, with structure, with carefully curated conditions designed to ensure the right outcome. True connection evaded all of it. Then, one evening, after canceling yet another carefully planned encounter, she walked into a neighborhood cafe with no agenda whatsoever. In the simple, open act of being fully present without expectation, she met someone who contradicted every criterion on her list and opened her heart in ways no amount of compatible criteria ever had. For one full day, practice radical trust. Begin your morning by releasing your schedule, your expectations, and your requirements for how things should unfold. Move through each moment, responding only to what is directly before you. When the urge to plan or control surfaces, and it will, simply observe it without acting on it. Stay present with the discomfort of not knowing. Notice how life continues flowing even without your careful management of it. Notice how solutions surface naturally, how connections form without being engineered, how a deeper intelligence operates when you finally step aside long enough to allow it. This practice is not about abandoning responsibility. It is about accessing the guidance that exists beyond your limited perspective, the wisdom that has been attempting to reach you through every gap in your planning. In the early hours before his usual workday, Benjamin sat surrounded by market analyses and financial projections, his mind generating calculations with exhausting speed in search of the clarity he needed to make a crucial decision. The more intensely he analyzed, the more paralyzed he became. Every answer generated 3 new questions. Every potential path revealed new obstacles. He had been thinking about this decision for weeks and understood it less clearly than when he began. The ancient Zen tradition speaks of mushin, the mind like perfectly still water that reflects reality exactly as it is, without the distortions created by turbulence. Modern brain research confirms the same insight from a different direction. When the mind enters states of genuine quiet, solutions arise from levels of consciousness that ordinary analytical thinking cannot reach. The answer was never in the analysis. It was in the space beneath the analysis. Benjamin discovered this only when exhaustion made continued thinking impossible. One morning, instead of immediately immersing himself in data, he simply sat in silence. In the space created by that surrender, clarity arrived, not as a thought, but as a knowing that transcended the thinking process entirely. Marion experienced the same truth as an artist. Her greatest works emerged not during the scheduled hours she devoted to forced creativity, but in the moments after she had abandoned the effort to create. One evening, she sat with her materials, without any agenda, and simply allowed whatever wanted to arise to arise. What came through her in that state of open receptivity touched people in ways that all her calculated effort had never managed to approach. To practice this, find a quiet space and allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm. For 10 minutes, release all effort to figure anything out. Let thoughts arrive and pass without following them. Simply rest in the silence that underlies your thinking mind. Notice how answers tend to arise not from mental strain, but from this space of genuine quiet. The way objects hidden at the bottom of a pond only become visible when the water above them is completely still. This is not a passive practice. It is access to the most active intelligence available to you, the infinite knowing that already exists beneath the surface of your thinking and has been waiting patiently for you to stop making enough noise to hear it. In the commercial heart of a city that never slowed down, Frank surrounded himself with every wealth-building resource available. Seminars, books, courses, mentorship programs, and strategies assembled from every corner of the financial self-help world. His shelves bent under the accumulated weight of other people's formulas for abundance, and yet his bank account remained stubbornly, almost defiantly, unchanged. Each morning he would study new approaches with the intensity of someone who genuinely could not understand why his dedication was not producing results. The universe was showing him something he had not yet developed the eyes to see. The very act of pursuing wealth, the frantic, contracted energy of chasing, was broadcasting a signal of lack so clearly that the universe had no choice but to reflect it back. When you chase money, you are telling the universe at a frequency beneath conscious language that you do not have it and desperately need it. And the universe, in its absolute precision, responds not to what you say you want, but to what your energy actually communicates. It hears the lack, it amplifies the lack. It sends you experiences that confirm the lack, because that is the frequency you are transmitting. Frank's genuine transformation began the day he traced his constant seeking back to its actual root, a deep, quiet belief that he was not fundamentally worthy of abundance. In that moment of uncomfortable honesty, he stopped running after wealth and made a different choice entirely. He chose to embody the energy of prosperity, not as a performance, but as a genuine inner shift. His posture changed, his breathing deepened. A natural confidence emerged that had nothing to do with his bank balance and everything to do with his relationship with his own worth. Within weeks, the external world began reorganizing itself around this new internal frequency. Clients sought him out without being pursued. Opportunities aligned without being engineered. Resources arrived through channels he had never thought to approach. He had not changed his strategy. He had changed his state of being. And that single shift accomplished what years of strategy never had. Rose's experience illuminates the same law operating in the domain of love and connection. After years of attending social events with the invisible but palpable energy of someone searching, she discovered that this very energy, however carefully concealed, was communicating itself to everyone she encountered. The moment she genuinely stopped searching and began living fully in her own joy, radiating the self-sufficiency of someone who is already complete, love arrived without being summoned. It was drawn to the light of her wholeness the way all things are drawn to genuine radiance. For the next 7 days, practice being rather than seeking in one specific area of your life where you have been running hardest. Each morning, take 3 slow, deliberate breaths and allow yourself to genuinely inhabit the energy of already having what you desire, not as a mental exercise, as a bodily reality. Move through your day as though abundance already fills every dimension of your existence. Walk with the ease of someone who has already arrived. Speak with the naturalness of someone who already belongs to what they are asking for. Notice how this shift in your energetic signature changes the way the world responds to you. How opportunities that were previously invisible begin surfacing. How people respond to you differently. How your reality begins quietly reorganizing itself around the frequency you are now transmitting. This is not pretending. It is tuning yourself to the reality that already exists in potential, waiting for your signal to match it closely enough to become physical. In the gleaming upper floors of a corporate organization, Oscar drove himself and everyone around him with a relentlessness that had long since crossed from productive into compulsive. His calendar held no open space. His inbox demanded constant attention. His mind ran simultaneously through dozens of strategies, each competing for the limited energy he had left after years of this pace. And yet, despite the ceaseless activity, the results he was producing bore little proportion to the effort he was investing. The truth that was eluding Oscar exists at the intersection of ancient wisdom and practical reality. Not all effort is created equal. In virtually every domain of human achievement, a small proportion of actions generate the overwhelming majority of meaningful results. 20% of your effort tends to produce 80% of your outcomes, not as a rough approximation, but as a pattern so consistent that it has been observed across industries, disciplines, and centuries. This is not merely a mathematical curiosity. It is a spiritual law pointing toward the natural efficiency of the universe, which accomplishes its greatest works through elegance rather than strain. Oscar's transformation began when he made the difficult choice to release the burden of unnecessary action. He looked honestly at everything filling his days and asked a question he had never thought to ask before. Which of these activities actually produces what matters? What remained after his honest assessment was a fraction of what he had been doing. But it was the fraction that carried almost all of the genuine value. In the space created by eliminating the rest, something new became possible. Inspired action. Those rare, unmistakable moments when a direction presents itself not from obligation or strategy, but from genuine inner alignment, and following it produces results that deliberate effort consistently failed to achieve. Beulah's healing journey reflects this same principle operating through the body. For years, she followed complex therapeutic protocols involving dozens of simultaneous interventions, each one added out of desperation rather than discernment. Her breakthrough came when she simplified everything down to what genuinely resonated with her own inner wisdom, releasing the elaborate framework of forced healing and allowing her body's natural restorative intelligence to operate with the space it needed. What years of complicated protocols had been unable to accomplish, simplification and genuine allowance achieved with a directness that surprised everyone, including her. For the next 3 days, practice what might be called an effort audit. List every activity and obligation currently occupying your time and energy. Then, in a state of genuine quiet rather than anxious analysis, ask yourself honestly, which of these arises from genuine inspiration rather than habit, obligation, or fear? Which of these actions actually moves what matters most? Eliminate or delegate everything that does not meet this standard. When you encounter tasks throughout your day, pause before engaging and ask whether this is truly essential, whether there is a simpler, more natural approach available. Watch as your energy naturally concentrates itself in the directions that genuinely matter. Notice how removing excessive effort creates the space through which real inspiration can finally reach you. The universe operates through elegant simplicity. When you align with this natural efficiency, you will consistently accomplish more through less, not as a paradox, but as the straightforward result of finally working with the universe's design rather than against it. In a small, familiar town, Harold had constructed a life of meticulous predictability. He checked weather forecasts 3 times before choosing his morning attire. He maintained detailed spreadsheets for decisions that most people made intuitively. His need for certainty had become so consuming that it had effectively reduced his world to a narrow corridor of the known, comfortable in its predictability, suffocating in its limitation. Then his company announced unexpected layoffs, and the corridor collapsed. The ancient teaching that uncertainty is not the enemy of power, but its very source will feel counterintuitive to anyone who has spent years trying to reduce life to a series of knowable, manageable outcomes. Yet, quantum physics reveals this not as philosophy, but as physical fact. At the most fundamental level of reality, certainty dissolves into probability, into waves of infinite potential that remain fluid until consciousness engages them. Your insistence on certainty does not protect you from uncertainty. It simply closes you off from the vast range of possibilities that exist beyond what you have already decided is possible. Harold's transformation began precisely when circumstances made certainty unavailable. Stripped of his familiar routines and predictable trajectory, he discovered something that his planned life had never accommodated: genuine creativity, genuine openness, opportunities that arrived specifically because he could no longer predict his path and therefore could not inadvertently block them with his expectations. In the markets of an ancient trading city, Mabel had inherited her family's established business and for years had followed the same routes, maintained the same supplier relationships, and sold the same goods through the same channels. When a storm destroyed her primary trade route and forced her into unknown territory, she discovered exotic goods and prosperous new customers that her certainty about the right way to operate had been making her structurally unable to find. The very disruption she had feared most delivered what her careful management never could. Tomorrow, practice an intentional step into uncertainty. Begin your day without plans or fixed expectations. Release your habitual routines and predetermined outcomes. When your mind reaches for certainty, and it will reach for it constantly, gently remind yourself, I am choosing to remain open to what is available beyond what I have already decided. Take a different route. Speak to someone outside your usual circle. Engage with something genuinely unfamiliar. When anxiety about the unknown surfaces, breathe into it rather than around it. Notice how uncertainty opens doors that your certainty has been keeping closed. Feel how releasing the requirement to know everything creates space for unexpected possibilities to enter your life. This is not recklessness. It is alignment with the universe's natural state of infinite potential, a state from which your certainty has been unconsciously protecting you and inadvertently limiting you for a very long time. At the edge of a rushing Highland river, Leonard stood with every muscle tensed against life's current. For years, he had responded to every challenge, every setback, every unwanted development with the same instinct: fight it, push back against it, refuse to accept it. And this resistance, he had come to understand after years of exhaustion, had extracted more from him than the actual difficulties ever had. The fighting had cost more than the circumstances being fought. The path of non-resistance is not passivity. It is the recognition that resistance itself generates a turbulence that compounds difficulty rather than resolving it. Like a river meeting a boulder, your resistance to what life brings creates chaos and drain where there could be smooth, efficient passage. The universe moves through perfect intelligence. Your resistance does not alter its movement. It only disrupts your own. Leonard's understanding arrived while watching the river itself. He observed how water never fought the rocks in its path. It did not slow down to argue with them or expend energy trying to move them. It curved around them with an ease that was somehow both yielding and completely unstoppable, always reaching its destination, never depleted by the journey. In that moment, Leonard understood that the water's power came precisely from its refusal to resist what was in its path. Agnes ran a small inn and had spent years exhausting herself by resisting the natural seasonal rhythms of her business, fighting the slow winter months, trying to maintain summer's energy and revenue through pure force of will. When she finally surrendered to the seasons rather than battling them, something she had not anticipated occurred. The quiet months became periods of renewal and genuine creativity, rested and receptive in ways the constant fighting had never permitted. She developed innovations during those unhurried winters that made her inn more genuinely prosperous than her most determined summer efforts had produced. For the next 3 days, practice observing where you resist life's natural movement. Notice the physical tension in your body, the tightness in your thinking when circumstances do not unfold according to your preferences. Instead of pushing against what is, practice offering each moment a quiet internal yes, not because everything that happens is what you would have chosen, but because resistance to what is already real costs you energy you could be directing toward what comes next. Begin each morning with this intention. Today I move with life rather than against it. When challenges surface, soften your resistance before responding. Feel how your body relaxes when you release the fighting. Notice how solutions become visible when you are no longer blocking them with the energy of refusal. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means the wisdom to stop spending your resources on a battle with reality that you were never going to win, and redirecting all of that reclaimed energy toward what genuinely matters. In his corner office, Clarence surrounded himself with the instruments of control that had served as the foundation of his professional identity for decades. Charts, plans, systems, contingencies. Each morning he would plot his path forward with the precision of someone who had confused thorough preparation with actual power. And each morning life would demonstrate, with quiet consistency, that it had its own ideas about how things would unfold. There is a deeper truth about control that most people only discover after they have exhausted themselves in its pursuit. Control is not power. It is the performance of power, a performance that consumes extraordinary energy while producing far less than it promises. True power is something else entirely. It is the capacity to align yourself so completely with the intelligence that governs all things that you become a natural vehicle for outcomes beyond anything your planning could have produced. When Clarence finally released his charts and his contingencies, not in despair, but in genuine surrender, the current of life that his planning had been partially obstructing began moving through him with a fluency he had never experienced during his years of careful management. Opportunities arrived without being manufactured. Connections formed without being engineered. Success flowed toward him with a grace that made his previous effortful approach look, in retrospect, like someone trying to improve a river by pushing the water upstream. In a small coastal town, Mara had spent decades believing herself to be the architect and sole engineer of her own destiny. She managed every variable, directed every outcome, maintained control over every detail she could reach. Then one morning, watching ocean waves shape the shoreline with a patience and precision that no human effort could replicate, She understood something that decades of control had obscured. The ocean did not fight its way into its perfect patterns. It simply moved, and in that continuous, unresisted movement, everything was accomplished with an elegance that intention alone could never have produced. The moment Mara released her grip on the outcome, she discovered something vertiginous and ultimately liberating. She had never been in control. The current had always known where it was taking her. Her resistance had only delayed the journey, and her surrender now revealed that the destination the current had been carrying her toward all along was precisely where she had most wanted to go. Each morning for the next 7 days, begin by consciously releasing every area of forced effort in your life. Say these words quietly, allowing them to settle into the body rather than simply passing through the mind. I surrender completely to the intelligence of life's flow. I release my need to force, control, or direct my path. I allow the current to carry me. Throughout each day, when you notice the impulse to grip, in meetings, in conversations, in decisions, return to this state of complete, conscious surrender. Watch for the signals of resistance within you: a tightened jaw, a clenched hand, a mind racing to manage outcomes. In each of these moments, breathe deeply and recall the lesson of the ocean. Nature's greatest accomplishments emerge from allowing rather than forcing. Your surrender is not the abandonment of ambition. It is the discovery of a power so much larger than your individual will that, once accessed, makes everything that came before it look like the effort of someone who had not yet understood what they were actually capable of. In the bustling streets of a city full of seekers, Stanley moved through his days with an invisible desperation that expressed itself through every interaction. Each conversation became an audition. Each relationship carried the weight of his need for external validation. He attended gatherings, maintained online presence, and followed every available piece of guidance on making himself more attractive to others. And the more visibly he reached, the more consistently others pulled back, responding instinctively to something in his energy that no amount of technique could conceal. The law that governs attraction operates with complete indifference to effort. What you chase tends to withdraw. What you genuinely embody tends to arrive naturally. This is not a motivational metaphor. It is a description of how energy actually functions, a reality that mystics have articulated for millennia, and that physics increasingly confirms through its understanding of resonance and field dynamics. When Stanley finally stopped reaching, when the exhaustion of constant seeking became greater than his fear of what might happen if he stopped, his energy shifted in a way that no deliberate technique had ever managed to produce. Without changing his external circumstances in any measurable way, he became genuinely magnetic. Others were drawn to his presence by something they could sense but not easily name. He had moved from the energy of needing to the energy of being, and the difference between these two states is the entire difference between someone who repels what they want and someone who naturally attracts it. Mavis, who ran a small business in a quiet mountain town, had exhausted every conventional networking approach available to her. She attended events, sent introductory messages, positioned herself strategically in rooms where the right people gathered. Success remained distant until she made a fundamental shift in her approach. Instead of projecting the energy of someone trying to attract the right connections, she began radiating the natural confidence of someone who was already operating from a place of genuine worth. Without any additional effort, the right people and the right opportunities found their way to her, drawn not by her strategy, but by the authentic field she was now generating. Find a quiet space and close your eyes. Bring your awareness to the energy of seeking, the contracted, reaching quality of someone who needs something from outside themselves in order to feel complete. Notice how this energy feels in your body. Now shift your awareness to the energy of already having, the expanded, settled quality of someone who is genuinely whole. Feel how this second energy moves differently through your chest, your shoulders, your breath. Throughout your day, whenever you notice yourself slipping into the first energy, reaching, needing, performing, pause, take a single conscious breath, and return to the second. Let your presence become your signal to the universe. Let who you are, rather than what you are trying to get, become the magnet. This is not a technique to master through practice. It is a truth to embody through recognition. The recognition that the universe responds not to what you want, but to what you are. In a quiet apartment filled with vision boards and carefully maintained manifestation journals, Milton sat each morning visualizing his goals with genuine devotion, and then spent the remainder of each day paralyzed by the fear that any action he took might somehow interfere with what the universe was arranging. "If I move," he would whisper to himself with a sincerity that was almost painful to witness, "I might disrupt the process." He had discovered the power of surrender, and then made of it a new form of avoidance, a spiritually decorated version of the same old fear. The universe reveals its deepest truths through paradox, and here is one of the most important. Genuine surrender is not inaction. It is action, without the weight of attachment to specific outcomes. It is the quality of movement that a leaf demonstrates in the wind, purposeful in its response to each moment, completely at peace with where it ultimately lands. It is the river that moves with clear direction, yet does not exhaust itself, resisting the rocks that occasionally redirect its course. Nature itself makes this teaching undeniable. A seed does not simply visualize its transformation into a mature tree. It breaks through its shell with genuine physical effort. It extends its roots into the soil. It reaches toward light. The difference between the seed's action and the action of someone forcing outcomes through anxious effort is not the presence or absence of movement. It is the quality of that movement, whether it arises from alignment with the natural order or from the contracted energy of fear and desperate need. Milton's breakthrough arrived while watching a master potter work. The artist's hands moved with complete purpose and decisive intention. Yet the touch was so gentle, so genuinely responsive to the clay's own nature, that the vessel seemed to find its form almost of its own accord. The potter was not forcing the clay to become something. The potter was in dialogue with it, bringing intention and allowing response in equal measure. In that observation, Milton understood what he had been missing. Manifestation requires both the clarity of intention and the openness of surrender. These are not opposites to be balanced against each other. They are partners in a single, unified movement. The ancient Taoist teachers spoke of Wu Wei as action without forcing, not absence of action, but action so perfectly aligned with natural law that it encounters no meaningful resistance. The martial arts embody this understanding in physical form. The most devastating power emerges not from muscular tension, but from complete relaxation, combined with precise timing. Even contemporary physics confirms that particles exist simultaneously in states of movement and potential until the moment of conscious observation, a reality that mirrors the spiritual truth that your desires exist in both a state of already being and a state of becoming simultaneously, until your aligned action collapses them into specific physical form. In a coastal town where the sea shaped everything, Sylvia had dreamed of opening a cafe for years. She had waited with patient devotion for a clear sign from the universe, believing that any initiative on her part before receiving that sign would demonstrate insufficient trust. Then, one morning, she watched a young child building a sand castle at the water's edge. The child worked with complete absorption and genuine effort, yet remained entirely unattached as each wave periodically smoothed away sections of her work. She simply continued, joyfully, lightly, without the weight of needing the castle to be permanent. Sylvia began moving toward her dream that same afternoon. She made phone calls. She viewed available locations. She drafted plans. All of it carried the child's quality of engaged, unattached presence, purposeful but not desperate, directional but not rigid. Within months, her cafe opened, not in the location she had originally envisioned, and not in the form she had initially planned, but in a version that exceeded what her planning had imagined and could never have produced. She had discovered the sacred equilibrium, moving forward with genuine intention while remaining genuinely open to the universe's adjustments. Choose one action today that moves you toward what genuinely matters to you, something you have been postponing, circling around, or waiting for perfect conditions to attempt. Before taking this action, breathe deeply and release all attachment to the specific outcome. Move forward with the lightness of someone who is offering their effort to the universe, rather than demanding a particular return on it. Let your action be clean, free of the weight of needing things to unfold in a predetermined way. This is aligned action, purposeful in its direction, surrendered in its attachment. The universe responds to this quality of movement with a generosity that anxious, outcome-attached effort consistently fails to access. In the quiet suburbs of a familiar town, Clyde sat before his manifestation journal each morning with the focused attention of someone carefully tending a garden, checking for signs of growth, evaluating whether his technique was correct, adjusting his approach based on the apparent absence of results. Each anxious inquiry sent another ripple of doubt through the very process he was trying to nurture. Each assessment of whether it was working carried the implicit energy of someone who suspected it was not. When you plant a seed in fertile soil, you do not excavate it each evening to examine its progress. You trust the intelligence of the process. You trust that the conditions you have created are sufficient. You trust that growth is occurring even when, especially when, it is not yet visible above the surface. The law of allowing operates through precisely this quality of trust. Every time you question whether your desires are manifesting, you introduce a frequency of doubt that disturbs the very process you are hoping to accelerate. The universe responds not to your stated intentions, but to your actual energetic relationship with them. And the energy of constant monitoring communicates, unmistakably, a fundamental lack of trust. The moon does not strain to move the tides. It maintains its presence with complete, unself-conscious consistency, and the waters respond with perfect reliability. The sun does not demand that flowers bloom on schedule. It simply shines with unwavering constancy, and petals open in their own time with their own particular grace. These are not poetic images. They are descriptions of how allowing actually operates, through presence and consistency rather than through interference and assessment. Gertrude, a talented visual artist, had spent years trying to control the reception of her work, sending follow-up messages compulsively, engineering every possible connection, forcing her way into awareness with an energy that expressed desperation, even when her words expressed confidence. Then, during a quiet winter morning, she observed a chrysalis on the fence of her garden. For weeks she watched without touching, without intervening, without attempting to assist or accelerate the transformation occurring inside. When the butterfly finally emerged, she understood with complete clarity that her interference, however well-intentioned, would have damaged what the natural process was producing. From that day forward, she continued creating with genuine dedication while releasing her grip on the reception of what she created. Within months, galleries began reaching out to her. Opportunities arrived that were genuinely better than anything her forced approach had managed to produce. Choose one area of your life where you typically monitor, check, and attempt to manage outcomes. For the next 7 days, consciously withdraw your interference. Continue your meaningful activities with genuine engagement, but release the compulsion to verify whether things are working. When the impulse to check or assess arises, and it will arise frequently, simply observe it without acting on it. Let the universe work without your constant supervision. Trust that what is genuinely meant for you has the navigational intelligence to find you without your anxious assistance. This practice will feel uncomfortable in ways that are themselves instructive. The discomfort reveals exactly where your trust has its edges, and the edges are precisely where growth becomes available. In the relentless forward momentum of a city built on achievement, Wilbur moved from accomplishment to accomplishment with the efficiency of someone who had confused constant motion with genuine living. Each goal reached revealed the next goal waiting. Each summit disclosed a higher summit beyond it. His shelves accumulated the physical evidence of genuine success, and the satisfaction he had been promised would arrive with each achievement remained as elusive as it had been at the beginning of his climbing. You have been taught by culture, by education, by the particular story your era tells about what a life well lived looks like, that happiness exists as a destination, that it waits at the completion of something, the acquisition of something, the resolution of something. This belief does not merely delay happiness, it structurally prevents it, because it places the condition for your well-being permanently in a future that by definition you never actually inhabit. You live in the present. Happiness, if it exists at all in your direct experience, can only exist here. The ancient teachers understood that joy is not something that happens to you when circumstances finally align correctly. It is a way of perceiving what is already present. It emerges not from adding new elements to your experience, but from awakening to the abundance that your forward-focused attention has been consistently overlooking. Blanche lived in a modest cottage at the edge of town for years, quietly postponing her contentment until larger circumstances materialized. Then, one ordinary morning, watching winter sunlight move through her kitchen window and transform the familiar space into something luminous and genuinely beautiful, she understood with sudden, complete clarity that she had been searching for what had always been present. From that morning forward, she stopped postponing her joy. She found it in the warmth of her morning tea, in the particular quality of birdsong at dawn, in the smile of someone she had never met before. Her circumstances had not changed. Her relationship with her circumstances had transformed entirely. 3 times each day, at the beginning of your morning, at midday, and as the day moves toward evening, pause and bring your full attention to 5 sources of genuine pleasure in your immediate environment. Not extraordinary pleasures, ordinary ones, the quality of light in the room where you are sitting, the sensation of the surface beneath your hands, the rhythm of your own breathing, the sounds of life continuing beyond your window. Allow these simple, always available realities to fill your awareness completely. Resist the habitual impulse to reach past them towards something more significant or more stimulating. In this practice of deliberate presence, you will gradually discover what has been true all along, that happiness was never lost and never distant. It was simply waiting in the place where it has always lived, in the only moment you actually have access to, which is this one. Each morning, Norman stood before his mirror, reciting affirmations that felt increasingly like arguments he was making against his own experience. Despite genuine professional accomplishments, an internal voice persisted beneath all the achievement, quiet but consistent, telling him that the distance between where he was and where he needed to be remained too large to be comfortable with. The insight that would eventually free Norman is one of the most practically powerful in all of manifestation understanding. Your subconscious mind, that ancient, extraordinarily capable aspect of your intelligence that operates beneath conscious awareness and governs the vast majority of your actual behavior, does not respond to what you are striving to become. It responds to what you genuinely are being. It cannot distinguish between a vividly inhabited inner experience and an outer physical reality. This is not a motivational claim. It is a description of how the human nervous system actually functions, confirmed by decades of research into visualization, performance psychology, and the neuroscience of belief. When you step fully into the energy of your desired reality, not as a future state you are working toward, but as a present state you are inhabiting, you transmit a frequency that the universe organizes itself around. Olympic athletes improve their measurable physical performance through visualization alone, not because imagination is a substitute for physical training, but because the nervous system and the energetic field it generates do not distinguish meaningfully between a fully embodied imagined experience and a physical one. Norman's transformation began the day he stopped rehearsing what he would do when success arrived and simply began being the version of himself for whom success was already a present reality. He dressed differently. He moved differently. He made decisions from this new perspective as a natural expression of who he now was, rather than who he was trying to become. Within weeks, his external reality began reorganizing itself around this new signal, as though the universe had simply been waiting for a clear enough indication of the frequency it should match. Edith worked in a small bookshop while carrying the private dream of becoming a published author. For years, she had oriented herself around the gap between her current reality and her desired one, a gap that her constant awareness of it kept feeling unbridgeable. Then she learned the art of embodiment. She began arranging her workspace as a successful author would arrange theirs. She organized her daily schedule as though writing was already her primary professional occupation. She spoke about her work, when she spoke about it at all, with the natural ease of someone whose relationship with their craft was already what they wanted it to be. One afternoon, in a cafe, a literary agent overheard her speaking with this quality of settled confidence and requested to see her manuscript. The book agreement that followed appeared miraculous to those observing from the outside. Edith understood it differently. She had simply aligned herself with a reality that had been available all along, waiting for her signal to match it closely enough to become physical. Tomorrow, inhabit your desired reality as your actual present reality. Choose clothing that reflects who you are becoming. Move through your day with the ease of someone who has already arrived at where they are going. Make decisions from this perspective as a natural expression of your actual identity. Speak from this place. When you encounter moments of doubt, and you will encounter them, simply notice them passing and return to the embodied knowing of who you genuinely are. You are not pretending. You are recognizing a truth that already exists in potential form and choosing to give it the signal it needs to become physically real. In a study filled with the accumulated evidence of decades of sincere spiritual practice, Eugene sat before his latest affirmation journal with hands that still trembled slightly despite all the years of dedicated work. The doubt that visited him was not the crude doubt of someone who had not tried. It was the subtle, persistent doubt of someone who had tried everything available and still found the ground of certainty shifting beneath them. The universe does not respond to your affirmations. It does not respond to your vision boards or your carefully maintained journals. It responds to your actual state of certainty, the quality of knowing that lives in the body rather than the mind, that exists beneath technique rather than within it. History's genuinely transformative achievers shared one quality that preceded all external validation. They held unwavering certainty about their direction before a single piece of confirming evidence existed. They did not wait for proof to believe. Their belief generated the proof. This is not a figure of speech. It is a precise description of how consciousness shapes physical reality. Every human being is born with direct access to this quality of knowing. Children inhabit it naturally, before the world teaches them that certainty requires external evidence. You once knew what it felt like to move through the world from a place of complete, unquestioned confidence in your own experience. That knowing is not gone. It has been obscured by years of conditioning that made external proof the prerequisite for internal certainty, and in doing so, reversed the actual order in which reality is created. Myrtle had hidden her artistic work for decades, producing it privately and sharing it with no one, sustained by a fear of judgment so consuming that it had become structural to her creative life. Then she discovered what genuine certainty felt like, not as a performance, but as an actual inner state, and began creating from that place. She shared her work with the quiet confidence of someone whose relationship with what they produce does not depend on how it is received. The art world responded as though it had been waiting specifically for her, because in a very real sense, it had been. The universe had always been prepared to reflect her certainty back to her. It had simply been waiting for her to generate it. For the next 7 days, choose one desire and bring to it the quality of absolute, embodied certainty. Not hope, not optimistic belief. Certainty, the same quality of knowing you bring to the expectation that the sun will rise tomorrow or that water will quench your thirst. When doubt surfaces, do not fight it. Simply observe it passing through your awareness the way weather passes through a sky that is not altered by any particular weather pattern. Remain rooted in knowing. Speak of your desire as already accomplished. Move through each day with the settled confidence of someone whose outcome is not in question. This is not self-deception. It is the recognition of how creation actually operates, and the practice of finally working with that process rather than against it. In the heart of a dense forest, where he had spent years forcing his business forward through sheer accumulated pressure, Archibald finally observed something he had been too busy to notice before: water moving through the landscape around him, shaped terrain that no direct assault could have altered, not through force, but through the patient, consistent practice of following the path that offered the least resistance. The water did not strategize. It did not overcome. It simply moved along the most natural available path, and in doing so, accomplished more permanent change than any amount of applied force could have managed. You have been taught that meaningful achievement requires overcoming resistance, that the measure of your effort is the measure of your commitment, and that the presence of difficulty confirms the worthiness of your goal. But observe nature honestly, and you will find no evidence for this teaching anywhere in the actual world. Lightning does not force its path through the atmosphere. It follows the route of least electrical resistance with such elegant efficiency that the result appears instantaneous. Light does not push its way through space. It travels the most efficient available path with a consistency so reliable that we use it to measure distance across the universe. The principle of least resistance is not laziness dressed in philosophical language. It is alignment with the universe's actual design. The recognition that the path which feels most natural, most aligned, most energetically coherent is not the easy way out, but the intelligent way through. Velma had been running her restaurant against the current of her market for years, fighting trends rather than flowing with them, imposing her vision rather than listening to what her customers were actually telling her they wanted, working 16-hour days to force results that her effort alone could not produce. Her genuine transformation began the day she surrendered to simplicity. She followed the easy paths that presented themselves rather than the predetermined routes her planning had designated. She listened to the subtle signals from her customers rather than continuing to project her own preferences onto them. Within months, her restaurant had developed a reputation that no marketing campaign could have manufactured, a quality of authentic, unforced warmth that customers recognized immediately and returned to consistently. Facing a significant decision in your own life, practice this. Rather than analyzing every available option with equal intensity, spend time in quiet, receptive observation. Notice which direction presents itself with the quality of ease, not effortlessness necessarily, but a sense of natural alignment, of moving with something rather than against it. For one full day, allow ease to be your primary guide. Set aside the conditioning that has taught you to distrust what feels natural and to place higher value on what requires struggle. Document what unfolds. Pay particular attention to how the universe responds to choices that align with natural flow, to the subtle synchronicities, the unexpected support, the sense of being moved by a current that was always present, but that your forcing had been preventing you from feeling. In a city of perpetual forward motion, Raymond clutched his plans and contingencies with the white-knuckled grip of someone who had confused preparation with safety. Each morning, he cataloged his worries with methodical thoroughness, his security, his future, his choices, the endless variety of ways in which things might go wrong. And these very defenses, assembled with such care against the feared outcomes, were themselves generating the contracted, fearful energy that made those outcomes more rather than less likely. When you surrender completely to all possibilities, when you release not just the outcome, but your relationship with the outcome, fear loses its grip on you in a way that no amount of courage or positive thinking can replicate from the outside. This is not a theory about psychology. It is a description of what happens at the energetic level when you stop fighting what is possible and allow yourself to be completely open to whatever arrives. Water is invincible not because it is hard, but because it is completely adaptable. It cannot be permanently destroyed because it accepts every form offered to it. This is your natural state, and it is available to you whenever you choose to stop pretending you need to be otherwise. Doris experienced this truth through the kind of concentrated circumstantial pressure that leaves a person no alternative but genuine surrender. Losing her professional position, her home, and a primary relationship in rapid succession, she arrived at the edge of her deepest fear, complete loss of control over the shape of her life. In that moment, she made a choice that was less a decision than a recognition. She stopped fighting against her circumstances. She released her grip on how things were supposed to look. She surrendered her need to know what the next chapter would bring. And in doing so, she discovered what mystics across every tradition have pointed toward. That surrender is not the end of power, but its actual beginning. Within months, opportunities arrived through channels she would never have thought to approach. Her life reorganized itself around a shape that was genuinely better than what her management had been trying to preserve. But the real transformation was interior, an unshakable quality of peace that had nothing to do with external circumstances and everything to do with her relationship with uncertainty itself. Find a quiet space and bring into your awareness your deepest fear, the one that has been directing more of your behavior than you have been consciously aware of. Now imagine opening yourself completely to this fear, not to be consumed by it, but to stop spending energy running from it. Become like water in your relationship with it, accepting its presence without being altered at the essential level by what it contains. Stay with this practice until you feel the genuine shift from resistance to acceptance, from contraction to openness. The universe cannot give you what you are blocking with fear, but it moves immediately and generously to fill the space created by genuine, complete surrender. In the quiet of his study, surrounded by the accumulated library of a lifetime's spiritual searching, Gilbert sat with a recognition that something essential had eluded all of his technique. He had traveled to distant places, studied with acclaimed teachers, and applied every practice with genuine dedication. And yet, the power he had been seeking seemed to remain one step beyond the reach of his most sincere effort. The greatest truth has always been the simplest one. You are not a seeker of reality. You are its source, not a receiver of creation, but its very origin. The backwards law was never ultimately about technique or method or the correct approach to manifestation. It was pointing, from every angle it could find, toward a recognition so fundamental that the mind consistently looks past it in search of something more sophisticated. The moment you stop seeking is the moment you recognize that what you were seeking is what you already are. When you push against reality with effort and force, you create the experience of separation, the felt sense of a self that is distinct from and in competition with the power it is trying to access. In this experience of separation, you forget what you actually are. You forget that your desires are not messages sent to some external intelligence. They are the universe expressing itself through the particular, unrepeatable form that is you. Hazel discovered this during a moment of complete internal silence. After years of practice, after setting aside all technique and all effort, after simply stopping. In that cessation, she saw with startling and permanent clarity that she had always been the creator. Every circumstance of her life had not been happening to her. It had been happening through her. She was not separate from the power she had been seeking permission to access. She was that power temporarily experiencing itself as a seeker, and the seeking had been the only thing preventing the recognition. This is not the conclusion of your journey. It is the beginning of a completely different relationship with your own life, one in which the energy you have been investing in pursuit becomes available for genuine creation, and the exhaustion of seeking gives way to the ease of simply being what you have always been. Sit in absolute stillness. Close your eyes and feel the presence of your own awareness, the unchanging, continuous consciousness that has been present through every experience of your life, unaltered by any of it. Recognize that this awareness is not something you possess. It is what you are, and what you are is not separate from the intelligence that governs all creation. It is that intelligence expressing itself through the particular lens of your experience. Speak these words not as affirmations you are hoping to make true, but as recognitions of what has always been true. I am not seeking power. I am the expression of power itself. I am not attracting reality. I am the consciousness through which reality continuously arises. Everything I experience flows from my own being. And I declare this not as a wish, but as the recognition of what has always been the case. Let this understanding settle into the deepest available level of your being. Feel the relief of it. Feel the profound simplicity of what it means to stop fighting a separation that was never real. The door that seemed to be locked from the outside was only ever closed from the inside, and the key has been in your possession all along. Throughout these 30 reflections, you have been moving toward a single recognition from 30 different directions. Every story, every principle, every practice has been a different path to the same clearing. The understanding that the universe does not need to be convinced, petitioned, or forced into cooperation. It is already cooperating. It has always been cooperating. The only thing that has ever prevented you from experiencing this is the energy of your own resistance. The contracted, effortful, fearful relationship with your desires that keeps what you are asking for at precisely the distance your energy communicates is appropriate. You now understand, not merely as an idea, but as something you have felt moving through you as you listened. That effort was never the path to genuine manifestation. That struggle was never the prerequisite for authentic success. That force was never the key to the power you are looking for. The truth that changes everything is this: you are the source from which all of your experience flows, not through doing, but through being, not through seeking, but through recognizing, not through the exhausting labor of forcing, but through the natural, effortless grace of allowing what is already yours to arrive. This understanding does not make life effortless in the sense of requiring nothing from you. It makes life effortless in the sense that the effort it does require arises naturally from alignment rather than from fear. And effort that arises from genuine alignment has a completely different quality than the exhausting, resistant effort you may have been familiar with until now. It is the difference between swimming upstream and being carried by a current that is already moving in the direction of everything you have ever genuinely wanted. The backwards law is not a technique you apply. It is a truth you inhabit, and you have already begun inhabiting it in the quality of your listening, in the moments of recognition that may have moved through you as these words found their way to you, in the subtle but real shift in your relationship with your own desires that may already be underway. The universe is not waiting for you to earn what you are asking for. It is waiting for you to stop preventing it from delivering what it has already been preparing. That preparation has been underway your entire life. The door has been open. Step through it. Not with effort, not with strategy, not with the desperate energy of someone who has been kept waiting too long. Step through it the way water finds its level, naturally, inevitably, with the complete ease of something returning to where it has always belonged. What you seek is not ahead of you. It is the ground you are already standing on. Recognize it, allow it, and discover what becomes possible when you finally stop working against the universe that has been working for you all along.